Next, let's take a look at A Journey to the West. In the last session, we left Washington and arrived in New York. People often talk about New York. The photos of Washington weren't too bad. Arrived in New York City. On August 1st, His Holiness departed by plane. He left Washington, D.C., the political center of the U.S. Washington is the political center. New York is the economic center. Boston is the cultural center. That's how people usually describe them. After a flight of more than 1 hour, he landed in New York, the economic hub of the U.S. The flight landed at LaGuardia Airport. There's also Kennedy Airport, right? Later, when we went from New York to Norway, we seemed to use a different airport. New York is the biggest city in the US. Back in 1789, it served as the temporary capital of the United States. The first president, George Washington, was sworn in right there in New York. In the early days, New York was the capital of the US. Since the 19th century, with its unique geographic location, New York City has been the economic and financial center of the U.S. After World War II, the international role of the US dollar was well established. Eventually, the dollar was linked to all international trade. Human history can sometimes seem unfair. Whoever emerges victorious from a war becomes the leader, and once you are the leader, your currency becomes the mainstream of global finance. Because so much of the world's gold is stored right there in Manhattan, the US dollar became the most dominant force in global finance and everything else in our world today. As for other countries, they use their own currencies too, but their influence isn't quite as broad. We don't know what the future holds, but this has been the reality since World War II. Previously, countries like Germany and Japan were very powerful, and at the very beginning France was also dominant, but the world is constantly changing. After the transition post-World War II, the status of Germany and Japan declined quite significantly. Now, in terms of global economies, Japan and Germany are around third and fourth. As for Russia, it's perhaps fifth or so now. New York further became the world's financial center. On this island of Manhattan that is less than 60 square kilometers, Manhattan Island, there are numerous financial and international trade institutions. There are so many there. Once you arrive, you might feel a different energy altogether. Financial information from the entire world is collected here. There are many deep principles behind this, but I won't go into detail due to time constraints. Almost everything that happens on this planet is inextricably linked to it. If we were to look into the situation in detail, there are many underlying reasons to be discussed. The place where His Holiness stayed in New York was located at 222 Bowery Street. This building has a history of over 100 years. Many influential artists have lived there. Later, some artists gave it a nickname. What was it? The Bunker. I don't know the reason for calling it the bunker. It doesn't really look like one. When we think of bunkers, we think of fortresses or actual underground bunkers like the ones in Gyalrong. There were quite a few symbolic ones back then. In terms of its shape and structure, as you can see in the photos, it doesn't look much like a fortress. But regardless of why they called it that, it remains an iconic building in New York today. Back in the 1970s, a disciple of Dudjom Rinpoche bought it and converted it into a Nyingma center. It was named the Padmasambhava Dharma Center. His Holiness stayed there for about a week, probably 7 or 8 days or so. We all stayed in that building. Actually, that house was added later. It was also part of the Dharma Center. The interior was like this. However, we remember that we would sometimes go out because the crowds were quite large when His Holiness taught. Even though it was called the Padmasambhava Dharma Center, we would sometimes rent external venues. That happened too. I recall we stayed on the 2nd floor or somewhere around there. This was in New York. A brief review of the Dharma tour in New York City. Next point. After 30 years, records of the teachings in New York and Boston have unfortunately been lost. From the very beginning, I had always wanted to write a memoir upon my return. I collected invitation letters and my own notes. I kept a huge pile of various records, including those from India. But over time, those memories started to fade. When I wrote about the Indian tour last year, I felt that many of my original impressions were gone. Some films and recordings of His Holiness were all, well, as I mentioned in the first chapter of A Journey to the West, the notes and cassette tapes from that time. The tapes were transferred several times. The formats kept changing over time. It started with cassette tapes, then DVDs, then VCDs, and then USB drives. All kinds of tapes, big and small. But last year, when I really sat down to work on this, many things were missing, especially for the 6th and 7th stops. For New York and Boston, we were stuck. We tried to contact the centers through other connections. The centers of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche still have quite a lot preserved. But in Boston, their center isn't quite the same now. They didn't save these records, so we found ourselves lacking materials for these two places. I asked around and inquired everywhere, but found only very little information. With no other choice, I can only briefly record the schedule based on the data I was able to gather. If we find more relevant materials in the future, I will share them with everyone in more detail, but that possibility seems quite slim. I've mentioned this online as well, but for these two cities, information is scarce. Still, there are a few very wonderful moments that I will share with you later. On August 2nd, at a Larung Dharma center, he gave a teaching on Kala Chakra. I visited this place again in 2017. When I was there in 2017, I also gave a talk to them. They missed His Holiness very much then. On August 3rd, at a Han Buddhist temple called Grace Gratitude Buddhist Temple, he gave the Peaceful Manjushri Empowerment. On August 4th, at the Padmasambhava Dharma Center, he gave the Vajrakilaya Gurukukma Empowerment. August 5th was also at the Padmasambhava Dharma Center. There's a distinction here. When the group was small, it was held at the center where we stayed. When the crowds were large, it was moved to a different venue for the public teaching on Vajrakilaya. On August 6th, at the Padmasambhava Dharma Center, His Holiness taught on the practice of Padmasambhava. On August 7th, at the Padmasambhava Dharma Center, he gave the Chetsun Nyingtig Empowerment in the morning. In the afternoon, he gave the transmission and explained the Chetsun Nyingtig. The empowerment was translated into English back then, and it was also translated into Chinese. The English translator was, Janet Gyatso, a professor from Harvard University. I'll likely talk more about her in the next day or two. I was the one doing the Chinese translation. It should be mentioned below. I'm not sure if it's there. On August 8th, at the Padmasambhava Dharma Center, he taught on the Chetsun Nyingtig in both the morning and afternoon. He must have given 3 sessions on the Chetsun Nyingtig, right? I recall we gave 4 sessions in Napa Valley. Was it 4 or something like that? Well, we didn't teach it here, so it's understandable that you wouldn't know. The English text below is the schedule from that time. Next, we'll talk about the Larung Dharma Center of Sutrayana and Tantrayana in New York. While His Holiness was in New York, he hoped to establish a Larung Buddhist center so that many people could continue to study the Sutrayana and Tantrayana teachings, and he put me in charge of this task. Initially, I wrote some simple advertisements. During the teaching sessions, I had the audacity to ask if anyone was interested. At that time, some Khenpos said, "You shouldn't do that. People here are thinking about this and that." They were a bit displeased with me, but regardless, I didn't mind. I felt this was His Holiness's wish, so I just kept talking about it. After much discussion, it all came together in a few days. Though I was in an unfamiliar place and didn't speak the language, registering a Dharma center abroad is relatively easy. Later, with the help of some devotees, after many discussions and coordination, within just a few short days, the registration and the selection of the venue were completed. All conditions fell into place. The first Larung Center in New York was established. It was named the Larung Dharma Center of Sutrayana and Tantrayana. His Holiness would give teachings during the day, and in the evening I would meet with the people involved. Look at our temporary center here. This center was actually used for a very long time. The space wasn't very large. We specifically placed an image of Manjushri inside and bought some offerings. Since we had to leave in 8 days, the center had to be fully ready before we left. All elements had to be prepared. To make communication easier at the start, most of the members were Chinese. Some of their family members also signed up. I don't think they are in this particular photo. The first photo here was taken when we were preparing in the evening. We set up a board of directors there. The person next to me, wearing white with 2 black stripes, that was the president at the time. After everything was set up, His Holiness came in person to consecrate it. He gave the Jampal Yeshe Sempa empowerment and related related teachings and blessed everyone individually. He blessed them one by one. He also seemed to give the center a statue of Manjushri or Avalokiteshvara. He gave them a statue and blessed everyone. Regarding the establishment of the Larung Center, at that time the New York World and Newsweek reported the news on the front page with an eye-catching headline. This is the Larung Dharma Center of Sutrayana and Tantrayana. This photo with His Holiness must have been from the following day. You can see the president is wearing different clothes. There are probably fewer than 20 people here, but on that day nearly 20 people attended. This center was managed for a while. Later, due to inconvenient communication and other reasons, we exchanged letters several times regarding their practice and things here, but eventually they weren't able to continue. Nonetheless, this served as an auspicious start, enabling many people to connect with the Dharma lineage of His Holiness. This connection played a crucial role in their liberation. I've heard that some of them are still practicing the Larung teachings today, inspiring many people around them. Later, when we were studying back then, some of those people participated. And then later, when I went back in 2013, the president called me. We wanted to meet up, but there wasn't enough time. That's one part. Let me share another story. Today we are going to visit the United Nations. Visited the United Nations headquarters. Mr. Maurice Strong, the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, sent a letter of invitation. When Tenzin Tulku did the narration, he put so much expression into it. That day when we were giving out prizes, a few of us were joking around. I said, when His Holiness was alive, you were the main master of ceremonies. Khenpo Tsultrim Lodra replied, does that mean I'm not one now? It's not that things aren't good now. It's that he has been promoted and doesn't need to be an MC anymore. We were all laughing there. While we were laughing, they captured it all on film. Regarding the Tibetan version, I remember the Tulku used such beautiful expressions. It sounds so wonderful when he chants in Tibetan. I used to try to imitate him quite often. Back then, the Under-Secretary General, Mr. Maurice Strong of the UN, wrote a letter inviting His Holiness to visit the headquarters. He also requested the mission of Bhutan to the UN to provide tour guides. There were two of them. It seems the two people in the photo below are not them. These people should be from the US side. The two from Bhutan appear in another photo. On August 3rd, His Holiness arrived at the UN headquarters. The flags of the 184 member countries were flying outside. There are over 190 now. Among those flags, the United Nations flag was in the center. We made a point of taking photos there. That's why I'm specifically wearing the same clothes I wore back then. The color hasn't faded much and the fit is still okay. It was quite hot in New York. In several of the previous photos, I was wearing this, including when we were at the Larung Center, just like in the photo we just saw. Let's see. Yes, the representative from Bhutan. The photo we took then is likely the one used for the cover. It seems this photo shows the Bhutanese representative guiding us through the Secretariat Tower, the General Assembly Hall, the conference building, and the library. I recall visiting something like the World Bank too, but for the World Bank. We went back in 2013 and again in 2017. I tried to find where we were specifically, but couldn't. It seems we went to a certain World Bank office at the headquarters and took a photo. There are many World Bank offices in New York, not just that one. They gave us a special introduction to a famous mosaic called the Golden Rule. This artwork emphasizes people of different races, colors, and creeds living together in harmony. When I returned in 2013, I saw it again. Actually, I didn't mention it regarding Washington, but I also went back to Washington in 2013. As for New York, I visited the Rubin Museum of Art in 2013. At that time, I gave several talks to the fellow practitioners of the Bodhidharma Society. When I went again in 2017, I gave 2 lectures at Columbia University. There are many Tibetans there, so I gave a talk for them and also taught on the peaceful Manjushri Great Perfection. The attendance at that time was was 5 and 55 people. I joked that when I was at Mount Wutai, the peaceful Manjushri empowerment wasn't successfully completed, but this time I'm here to give it to you. Because many of them had completed the 5 preliminary practices very diligently. Some people flew in from both home and abroad. We gave the teaching in a hotel then. We gave them this teaching. Later it seems we also visited those places and saw the mosaic again. They all enjoy the same dignity. At the bottom of the artwork there is a sentence in English. You can see it there. Translated it says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." It is very similar to what we often say, do not do to others what you would not have them do to you. It's much the same principle. Afterward, His Holiness went to the General Assembly Hall, the place where representatives of all nations hold meetings. That day the hall was empty, not a soul in sight, but His Holiness was very interested in it. He prayed for a long time for world peace. This was selected from the video. When we visited later, we did the same thing. We went there and chanted the Wangdu prayer 3 times. When we visited in 2017, we also went to the General Assembly Hall and chanted the Wangdu prayer. His Holiness prayed for a long time. Together with all the accompanying staff, he chanted Wangdu, the great cloud of blessings. If you visit there in the future, you should also go to the General Assembly Hall and chant the Wangdu prayer 3 times, okay? All right, we will stop here for today.
Padmasambhava Padmasambhava